Hello everybody, welcome back to our home base. Not outside, we're playing indoors this week, playing in the Dome Stadium. I guess the first toy talk to, we're just going to breeze over it because none of you guys like soccer that much.
Oh, I love it.
We watched it last night.
Yeah, it was an entertaining contest, I'll tell you what.
USA was up 2-0 and Mexico ended up giving 4 unanswered goals, much to Arnold's chagrin, ended up losing it in the Gold Cup finals, which was really sad. Freddie Adu, if you remember him, 22 years old, got his start.
Yeah.
Thought that was noteworthy.
Oh yeah.
Not that his play was noteworthy by any means.
All right, we're going to start with, we're going to go move past that, go to the NBA draft. You guys, a lot of teams, like we said in the first one, we got winners and losers. Who's your big winner?
I think the Denver Nuggets did a really good job this year in the draft. I mean, they lost Carmelo Anthony during the season, so they needed to replace him. And they got a nice power forward from Morehead State, Kenneth Faried, who took Morehead State on a nice run to the NCAA tournament. And then they got Jordan Hamilton from Texas, who could be a very nice role player for them.
I like what Cleveland did. They drafted a point guard. It's a point guard driven league these days. Look at Derrick Rose, MVP. There's a lot of other young point guards in the league, and it seems like Rondo's won a title. It seems like they're going to build from the point guard in on that team because everybody's all up in arms that they lost LeBron James. You're not going to replace LeBron James. You just can't do it, regardless of when the draft is, 5 years, 10 years from now. You're not going to replace him. He's arguably the best player in the game. But with Kyrie Irving, I think that's a step in the right direction to kind of rebuild that franchise because they're definitely in rebuild mode.
I think the big problem with this draft was there is no big stud player in that game. I mean, I don't think Kyrie Irving was the best player there. I think Derrick Williams was there from Arizona. It's probably the most NBA-ready player in the draft, but it's just not a draft where you're going to come out and say, hey, we just drafted a LeBron or a Kobe or whatnot. There's no big stud that was in this draft. This is probably one of the weakest drafts they've had.
Well, that to be fair, Cleveland has made it clear they're not really in a rush to win right away.
No.
So Kyrie Irving can kind of hang out for a while, get seasoned as an NBA professional.
They just have a big plethora of point guards now. They have to figure out what to do with Baron Davis and Daniel Gibson and Ramon Sessions. They just got too many point guards on that team.
Right.
Let me ask you guys this: the biggest news headline guy in college basketball last year was Jimmer Fredette. He ended up getting traded in a 3-team trade and going to Sacramento. I don't really know how that's going to fit. I mean, they got a lot. Jimmer's a shoot-first guy, and Sacramento's got quite a few shoot-first guys on the team, and now he's going to be their point guard. How do you think that's going to shake out in Sacramento? Same
thing like Cleveland. Sacramento's also in a kind of a rebuilding phase. They've been in a rebuilding phase for the better part of the decade.
Yeah.
But to be fair, Jimmer Fredette he's one of those guys that's going to sell tickets there in Sacramento. Apparently they're going to stick in Sacramento this last year, and if they move to Anaheim next year, if they don't, they move to Las Vegas, whatever. Either way, it almost seems like the Maloofs did this to kind of sell tickets, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be able to get his own shot in the NBA. Right. He's a terrific shooter. I mean, no one's going to deny that at all for him. I just don't like how Sacramento went about getting him because they, a couple years ago, traded John Salmons to dump his salary, and then they basically traded to get his salary back and get Jimmer. So, I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense in that aspect. I mean,
the NBA is a funky league. It's like nobody trades for a certain player. They trade for salary cap and dumping cap. It's a bizarre league.
The biggest problem is he doesn't play defense at all. Yeah. I mean, they try to compare him to J.J. Redick, and they're very different players. But I mean, if he doesn't play any defense, he's not going to last very long.
Right. All right, the other thing in the NBA, we got the lockout looming overhead. Now, Charles Barkley, they're always outspoken, always entertaining analyst Charles Barkley. He firmly believes there's going to be a lockout. He says it's going to be devastating. He says a lot of the owners of the NBA teams are also owners of NHL teams who went through the lockout, and they have no problem sitting out the entire year to get what they want.
Right.
How devastating is this going to be for the league if it does?
It could be pretty bad. I mean, their popularity is pretty high right now with all their big stars. I mean, there's really a lot of top-tier stars they have in the NBA right now. But, I mean, they're about as far apart right now as the NFL lockout is. I mean, there's just, the players want a lot. They want the guaranteed contracts, and the owners want a hard salary cap. And it's just not going to happen anytime soon. They're probably going to look at losing a season or at least half the season like they did in '98. So it's not a good situation.
Right. Coming from myself, I'm a big hockey fan, and when the league went away for a year, you've said it a couple times when we discussed hockey off camera, nobody cared that it went away for a year.
Nobody noticed.
Nobody noticed, exactly.
I did.
Right. Ratings are up in the NHL. It took a long time to get back, but it's because they have a lot of these star players. You have your Crosby's, your Ovechkins, Jonathan Taves in Chicago. Big market teams are winning again. Boston, Chicago, teams like that. In the NBA, it's a little bit different. They do. This is the highest point they've been in terms of popularity and star power in the league since probably the early '90s and mid '90s with Michael Jordan, because you got your Dwayne Wade. Yeah, the whole Miami Heat squad. That's a storyline in and of itself. Dirk's only got a couple more years left. Shaq's gone. So there's a lot of star power right now. But just like Larry said, a lockout would just be absolutely devastating. It's almost like they're at the top of the roller coaster just coasts back down.
Yeah, and so, I mean, 22 of the 30 teams are losing money, so that right there tells you that, I mean, they're in big problems.
Yeah, some changes. Yeah, and they always talk about contraction in NHL. They say 30 teams are way too many in the NHL. Perhaps the NBA should maybe consider closing some of these smaller teams that aren't really drawing a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because I mean, all these guys are in business to make money.
Yeah.
It's not a put it on for the fans kind of thing. They're in it to make money.
Let me ask you guys this: with the NBA, like you said, the NBA being so popular this year, really quick, who do you think, with it being so popular, who do you think has more of an advantage? Because the NHL, the ratings were bad.
Right.
NBA is sky high. Who do you think that helps more, the owners or the players?
I think it helps the owners because they're like we said a couple times on the program. They're floating the bill. They're paying the bills. They're turning the lights on. They're building the stadiums. I think it definitely fares well for the owners, because if these guys don't want to play, you could have replacement players or anything like that. Not that they would ever want to replace players, because nobody would watch it if some bums from BYU that aren't Jimmer Fredette are playing. But I definitely works in the favor of the owners. Absolutely.
Really quick.
Yeah, I mean, it's really in favor of the owners. I mean, they control everything. I mean, they can always find other players that will play for whatever they decide to pay them.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll talk about some baseball. Hello everybody, welcome back to Scores, Goals, and Touchdowns with Mr. Pat. I realized at first I didn't introduce you guys.
That's okay. We understand.
All right, Nick Anderson, LC Gagan, back again, week 3, third in a row. What's going on right now in baseball is really my favorite time of the year in baseball outside of the playoffs. You have interleague play, partially because the White Sox always dominate the NL. Now, right now we got going on the interleague, like I said. What are your thoughts on the interleague play?
I've grown tired of interleague play. It was
really?
it was cool for like a couple of years, because it was like, especially when I used to have season tickets for the Tigers, it was cool to say, hey, the Cubs are going to come play at Tiger Stadium, and you don't ever get to see the Cubs play there. So I mean, and that was when Sammy Sosa was hitting all his home runs. So it was cool to see teams like that you never see play, like the Cubs, the Cardinals, the Braves, that were awesome during the 90s.
Yeah.
But now I think it's really run its course. We've seen all these teams, and especially for markets that don't have that natural rival to play, like the Tigers don't have that rival. The Brewers, the Cardinals, I mean, they have the Royals, take that back. But I mean, a lot of teams that aren't in like a big market don't have that natural rival to play, and they end up getting stuck playing teams like Arizona or Florida. It's like, I don't want to see these teams. I just assume rather go play the Yankees again than play, a terrible team in the NL.
Right. I think I kind of agree with Larry that interleague play is kind of. It almost seems like baseball is kind of running out of ideas on how to stay not popular, but stay interesting. I mean, it's great. They're National League teams and playing American League teams. Even in like the All-Star game, they phased out pitchers batting. I mean, there's a very small divide between, outside of the double switch, obviously, and pitchers batting. There's a very small divide in between what makes National League teams and American League teams different in terms of just like how the game is played. There's been talk recently that they're just going to phase out the DH eventually in the next couple of years, just to kind of make everybody on the level playing field. I don't know. I mean, like, it's a good idea. Like Larry said, it's a good idea, and the matchups is wherein lies the problem. Like Seattle played the Marlins, I think, this weekend. Yeah. Why are they? They're on opposite ends of the map. Why does that make sense? They both have M's starting their name, I guess.
My thing is, I love watching the Cubs and the White Sox play. I like the.
Well, see, that's different.
And those rivalries you can keep throughout the season. If you want to have the Mets play the Yankees every year, I'm cool with that. If you want to have the White Sox and Cubs, the Dodgers and Angels, that's fine. But I don't need to see the Twins playing the Astros. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it almost seems like they should just abolish both the National and the American League. It's like other sports; they have different conferences that are kind of like the American and National League, but they play the game the exact same way. Yeah. It almost seems archaic to continue having pitchers bat, double switch, when you can just mush all these teams into like 3 equal divisions or 4 equal divisions, whatever, however you want to do it, and just have all the Chicago teams in the same division, and they play each other, 15 times a year. It just makes too much sense.
Just balance out the schedule.
Yeah, balance schedule, exactly.
So you're not playing divisional rivals 19 times a season.
Right.
Now, another thing people always talk about, the DH, like you guys brought up earlier, do you think that gives the AL an advantage, something they're always used to?
I mean, to an extent. I mean, really, outside of like David Ortiz and like Adam Dunn, who are the remaining good DHs that are just like, man, you gotta watch out for him?
Maybe throwing Jim Thome in there.
Jim Thome, yeah, exactly.
And I guess, honestly, I think it puts the AL almost at a disadvantage because the NL teams get to add another hitter into their lineup when they come to AL parks. Like right now, the Diamondbacks brought up Willie Mopena just to play interleague play to be another hitter. Not saying he's the greatest example of a hitter, but he hit a home run on Friday night that won them the game.
All right.
So, I mean, and then when the AL goes to NL parks, they lose their DH, they lose that extra hitter, and teams that have, multitudes of good hitters have to take one of those guys out of the lineup and shuffle things around. I mean, for God's sakes, the Tigers put their catcher at third base, and the Red Sox went with Adrian Gonzalez in left field. So they can keep all these guys in there. So, I mean, it really puts the AL teams at a much bigger disadvantage, I think, than the NL teams do.
I agree with you. I gotta take issue with one thing you said. You included Adam Dunn in your list of good
Okay,
DHs.
up until this year, the guy smacks the cover off
The
the ball.
dude is 152 against left-handed pitching, man.
Okay, but last year, he's hit 40 home runs every year for like 8
12
years.
years,
Yeah, ever since he came out of his mom's womb, he hit home runs. It's I mean, right.
Being in the
But
AL
just like
is not
David
good for
Ortiz,
him.
he had that one bad year 2 years ago. Now he's back to playing awesome baseball. He's hit 300. He never hits 300. He's always like a 270 hitter. It's incredible.
That's because every now and then he figures out to hit the ball.
Right.
This is something I've been thinking about when we're talking about the AL versus NL advantage. I think with AL pitching, you think that gives them a bit of advantage? Because, I mean, the guys, they don't have to bat.
Right.
So they can play like Pedro Martinez. He can protect the plate so much. I mean, NL guys, when they're pitching, they got to worry about, oh man, I'm going to come up in a little bit. I can get hit.
Right.
Yeah.
It definitely works in your mind, but if a lot of these guys came through college batting and not necessarily playing just pitcher in like high school and college and stuff, they kind of work their way into that.
I mean, generally pitchers, when they're in high school and college, are generally one of the best athletes on the team.
Yeah.
But most of these guys, especially in AL teams, they don't practice hitting at all.
Yeah.
And I mean, they only do it that week or two when they're in interleague, and then they don't do it at all. NL teams, their pitchers are practicing at least a couple times a week and getting to hit more. So I mean, that definitely favors the NL teams more so than the AL.
That, and now back to the whole DH thing. When is the last time a National League pitcher ever hit a ball that was worth anything, that was any sort of winning home run or a winning hit or anything like that? Never happens.
I mean, they get the sack bunts, and they do. Some of them are good hitters.
Willis was a good hitter.
Yeah, Dontrell Willis was a very good hitter. And I mean,
Mike Hampton was a good hitter
too. But I mean, when these AL pitchers, you see them going up and trying to hack in these NL parks, and it's just miserable.
Yeah,
and that's why I
it's
think they just need to go to the DH in both leagues and get rid of pitchers hitting, because it's just atrocious to watch.
Now, the other big story, we have Jim Riggleman, the manager of the Washington Nationals, resigned. They won 11 of 12, and they were over 500 for the first time in 12 years. He wanted to talk about his contract with the GM when they were in Chicago. GM said no. He said, all right, I'm out.
Right.
He's unhireable now. I mean, he basically quit on his team because they wouldn't talk to him about a contract. I mean, who's going to want to hire this guy, because if he has any sort of problem, he's going to walk again.
Right.
I mean, I understand that you have your principles and whatnot, but you can only take your principles so far and take yourself out of a good situation with a very young and up-and-coming team in the National League.
Right.
I just don't see any sense in what he did.
Right. To be fair, though, we all have jobs. We want evaluation on how we're doing in our job. And when Jim Riggleman's been on contract, 1-year contract since 2009. It almost seems like he's built this team up. They almost deserve to sit down with him over a meal and ask, hey, what's my future with this team? Where do you see me going? I completely agree with him.
We're going to take a quick break and come back and do Pat's piece. Want to know one of the reasons baseball is so awesome? It's a sport that is almost entirely governed by unwritten rules. Don't show up the pitcher. Don't try to break up a no-hitter with a bunt. Don't try to steal the catcher's signals. And breaking these rules usually ends with a fastball in somebody's spine. Now, it has to be scary if you're on deck and you see the guy ahead of you hit a home run and he poses for just a bit too long, because you know that message is getting sent to you. Now, when you do get hit, that brings up the rule to never rub where you got hit. You have to let the pitcher know that it didn't hurt. Now, that's one of the litany of reasons that I love Ozzie Guillen. He doesn't care who knows. He will flat out tell teams he's going to make his pitchers throw it to you. He once said if he thinks one of his players was hit on purpose, he's taking out 2 of their guys. Call it stupid, call it sick, call it immature. I call it baseball, and I love it. Thank you for watching Scores, Goals, and Touchdowns with Mr. Pat. See you next week.